Jack Harrison drove his old truck up the dirt road that led to his grandfather's cabin. The tires kicked up dust as he rounded the final bend. He stopped the truck and stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel. From this spot on the hill, he could see everything. The forest that surrounded the property, the lake that sparkled in the distance, and now, the new housing development that covered what used to be Harrison land. Jack's hands tightened into fists as he looked at the 156 identical houses that now stood where tall trees and wild meadows once grew. The Pinewood Valley Homeowners Association had seized 80 acres of his family's land while he was deployed overseas with the military. They had used a surveying error and bribed a county clerk to make it happen. By the time Jack received word of what was happening, the construction was already underway. The sunset painted the sky orange and red behind the development. The houses looked like toy models from up here, perfect little boxes with perfect little yards. Moving trucks came and went as new families settled in, unaware they were living on stolen land. Jack took a deep breath of the cool evening air. He had been back for just 2 weeks. His time in the military had changed him, made him harder in some ways, but nothing prepared him for the anger he felt seeing his family's legacy cut in half. "I thought I might find you up here," a voice said behind him. Jack turned to see his cousin Olivia walking up the path. Her red hair was tied back, and she wore the old flannel jacket that had belonged to their grandfather, Frank. "Just watching the invasion," Jack said, nodding toward the development. Olivia stood beside him. "It's awful. Grandpa Frank would have fought them with everything he had." "Yeah, well, Grandpa Frank was here to stop them. I was halfway around the world." Jack kicked a stone, sending it bouncing down the path. "It's not your fault," Olivia said. "And besides, Grandpa had a plan for something like this. He always said someone might try to take the land someday." Jack looked at her. "What are you talking about?" Olivia smiled. "Did you read his will completely? The part about the cabin basement?" Jack shook his head. He had only skimmed the document after returning home, too overwhelmed by grief and anger to pay close attention. "Come on," Olivia said, heading toward the cabin. "There's something you need to see." The cabin was small but sturdy, built by Jack's great-grandfather nearly 100 years ago. Inside, the wood floors creaked as they walked across the main room to a faded rug near the fireplace. Olivia pulled the rug aside to reveal a trap door Jack had never noticed before. "How long have you known about this?" Jack asked. "Grandpa showed me just before he died. He made me promise not to tell anyone until you came home." Olivia pulled a key from her pocket and unlocked the door. "He said the family secret needed a Harrison man to activate it, and you're the last Harrison man." Jack helped her pull the heavy door open. A set of stairs led down into darkness. Olivia found a light switch and bulbs flickered to life, revealing a room Jack couldn't believe existed beneath the simple cabin he had visited all his life. The basement was filled with equipment that looked both old and impossibly advanced. Glass tubes ran along the ceiling, filled with swirling blue light. Metal devices with dials and buttons lined the walls. In the center stood a table with maps of the property, covered in strange symbols and equations. "What is all this?" Jack whispered. "The Harrison family secret," Olivia said. "Our family weren't just simple farmers like everyone thinks. Grandpa Frank was a physicist, so was his father, and his father before him. They just preferred to work in private, away from universities and government oversight." Jack walked around the room in amazement. What were they working on? Quantum physics mostly, ways to manipulate space. Olivia pointed to the maps. "Grandpa called this the family's insurance policy. He said if anyone ever tried to steal our land, we had a way to get it back." Jack studied the maps and notes. Despite his lack of scientific background, he could see that the strange symbols formed a grid that covered the entire property. "I don't understand. What does this do?" Olivia picked up an old journal from the table and handed it to him. Grandpa wrote that the family installed something he called a quantum displacement field throughout the soil. It's been dormant for decades, but it can be activated if needed. Jack flipped through the journal, seeing diagrams and notes in his grandfather's handwriting. "What happens when it's activated?" "According to Grandpa, the land remembers who it belongs to." Olivia pointed to a large red button protected by a glass case. Once activated, any unauthorized structures on Harrison land will experience problems. What kind of problems? Spatial anomalies, reality distortions, impossible architecture. Olivia shrugged. I don't understand all the science, but Grandpa said the effects start small and grow over time. The land essentially rejects what doesn't belong. Jack placed his hand on the glass case. And this would affect the entire development? Only the houses built on our land. The field stops at the property line. The real property line, not the fake one they created. Jack stared at the button, thinking of the families moving into their new homes below. They didn't know they were part of a land grab. They were just people looking for nice houses in a beautiful valley. A knock at the cabin door upstairs interrupted his thoughts. Olivia went up to answer it while Jack continued examining his grandfather's work. He heard voices. Then Olivia came back down, her face tight with anger. You have a visitor, she said. Diana Watkins, president of the Pinewood Valley HOA. She brought you a rule book and says your cabin needs to comply with their standards. Jack laughed in disbelief. They steal our land and now they want to tell us how our cabin should look? She says the cabin affects their property values. They want you to repaint, replace the roof, and remove the solar panels. Jack looked at the activation button again. He placed his palm against the cool glass, feeling the weight of his family's legacy. His grandfather had prepared for this day, creating a strange and powerful defense that had waited silently for a century. Tell Ms. Watkins I'll be right up, Jack said quietly. I think it's time the Harrisons introduced ourselves properly to our new neighbors. Olivia nodded and went back upstairs. Jack took one last look around the secret laboratory, understanding now why his family had always been so protective of their land. This wasn't just about property. It was about something much older and stranger, a scientific legacy that had been hiding in plain sight for generations. Jack followed Olivia up the stairs, closing the trapdoor behind him. The HOA had no idea what they had stumbled into. The Harrison family's 100-year trap was about to be sprung. 3 weeks passed since Jack Harrison activated his grandfather's strange device in the hidden basement. Life at the cabin continued normally. Jack fixed the leaky roof, chopped firewood, and spent his evenings reading through his grandfather's journals. The more he read, the more he understood the brilliant minds in his family tree. They had discovered principles of quantum physics decades before the rest of the scientific world. Down in the valley, the Pinewood Valley development was fully occupied now. All 156 houses had families living in them. From his hilltop view, Jack could see people moving about their daily lives, unaware of the invisible changes happening beneath their feet. The quantum displacement field had begun its work slowly, just as Grandfather Frank had written it would. The effects would start small, almost unnoticeable. Then they would grow. On a Tuesday morning, Diana Watkins called an emergency HOA meeting at the new community center. The large room filled quickly as neighbors arrived, many looking confused or upset. Diana stood at the front, trying to maintain her usual confident appearance, but Jack could see worry lines around her eyes. He sat quietly in the back row. No one questioned his presence. As the owner of the adjacent property, he had a right to attend. Diana tapped the microphone. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I've called this meeting because several residents have reported unusual issues with their homes. I want to assure everyone that we're taking these reports seriously. A man in a blue shirt stood up. My kitchen island moved by itself. I'm not talking about a few inches. It was on the opposite side of the room when I woke up yesterday. Murmurs spread through the crowd. A woman near the front raised her hand. My stairs added an extra step overnight, she said. I counted 12 steps when I went to bed. Yesterday morning there were 13. I fell and nearly broke my neck. More people began to share similar stories. One family found a closet in their hallway that hadn't been there before. Another discovered their bathroom had switched places with their bedroom. A man complained that his front door sometimes opened to his backyard instead of the street. These are just settling issues with new construction, Diana insisted, though her voice lacked confidence. We've contacted the builders and they'll be inspecting all homes this week. Jack watched the worried faces around him. The quantum displacement field was working exactly as his grandfather had described. Phase 1 was complete. The land was beginning to reject the unauthorized structures. After the meeting, Jack walked to his truck. Diana followed him across the parking lot. "Mr. Harrison," she called. "May I have a word?" Jack turned to face her. Diana Watkins was tall and well-dressed with the confident manner of someone used to getting her way. But today she looked rattled. "What can I do for you, Ms. Watkins?" Jack asked. "These issues our residents are experiencing. Do you know anything about them?" Her eyes narrowed. "It seems strange that only our development is affected. Your cabin just up the hill appears to be fine." Jack leaned against his truck. "My family has lived on this land for generations. We've always said the Harrison property has a way of looking after itself." "What is that supposed to mean?" Diana crossed her arms. "Just an old family saying," Jack replied with a smile. "Good luck with your inspections." As Jack drove up the hill to his cabin, he saw Olivia's car parked outside. She sat on the porch steps waiting for him. "How was the meeting?" she asked as he approached. "It's starting," Jack said. "Just like Grandpa Frank wrote it would. Small changes at first. The houses are reshaping themselves." Olivia nodded. "I went into town today. People are talking. They say the development is haunted or built on some kind of energy field." "They're not entirely wrong." Jack sat beside her, on the steps. "What do we do now?" "There are families down there, Olivia. Kids. They didn't steal our land. They just bought houses from people who did." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Grandpa's journal said the process can't be stopped once it starts. But it can be controlled. The effect will grow stronger on its own, but you can direct where the worst changes happen." That night, Jack returned to the basement laboratory. He studied the control panel that connected to the quantum displacement field. According to his grandfather's notes, he could focus the field's effects on specific areas by adjusting the dials and inputting coordinates. Jack made his decision. He would spare the houses where families with children lived. He would focus the strange effects on the empty model homes at the edge of the development and on the HOA office building. The innocent would be protected as much as possible, but those responsible would feel the full force of the Harrison family's century-old defense system. Over the next few days, the stories from the valley grew stranger. The model homes began to change visibly, their walls bending at impossible angles and their windows showing views that couldn't exist. The HOA office building reported doors that opened into empty space and rooms that seemed to grow or shrink without warning. One morning, Greg Phillips woke to find his bedroom had detached from his house and was now connected to Melissa Wright's living room, though their houses were supposed to be separated by 3 other properties. Both families evacuated immediately, calling for emergency inspections. The local news arrived with cameras and reporters. They filmed the increasingly bizarre architectural changes happening in parts of Pinewood Valley. Engineers and building inspectors were baffled. The foundations were sound, the construction was done correctly, but reality itself seemed to be warping within the development's boundaries. Diana Watkins held more emergency meetings, but fewer residents attended each time. Some families had already moved out, abandoning their new homes. Others stayed but reported growing anxiety and strange dreams about shifting spaces. Jack watched it all from his cabin. The quantum field was working faster than he had expected. At this rate, the development would become uninhabitable within months, not years, as his grandfather had predicted. The power of the old technology was greater than even the Harrison family had realized. Olivia visited regularly, bringing news from town and helping Jack understand more of his grandfather's complex notes. "The county officials are investigating the original land survey now," she told him one evening. "The clerk who approved the change boundary has disappeared. People are starting to connect the dots." Jack nodded. "It's only a matter of time before Diana Watkins figures it out, too. She's not stupid." "What will you do when she comes for answers?" Olivia asked. Jack looked down at the valley where strange lights now glowed from some of the houses after dark, shifting in colors that shouldn't exist in nature. "I'll tell her the truth," he said. "The land remembers who it belongs to, and it wants to come home." 2 months after the first strange events began, life in Pinewood Valley was no longer normal. The local newspaper ran daily stories about the Pinewood anomaly. Television crews from national networks parked their vans at the edge of the development, but none ventured too far inside. The last camera team that tried found their equipment failing in bizarre ways. Footage showed impossible angles and colors that shouldn't exist. Nearly a third of the homes stood empty now. Families had packed up and left, accepting huge financial losses just to escape. For those who remained, either too stubborn or too financially trapped to leave, each day brought new challenges. The HOA board had hired engineers, architects, soil experts, and even a team of paranormal investigators. None could explain why the laws of physics seemed to be breaking down exclusively within the boundaries of the development. The strangest part was that the effect stopped exactly at the old property line, the true border of Harrison land, not the false one created by the corrupt survey. Jack continued to monitor the situation from his cabin, which remained perfectly normal despite being only yards from the affected zone. He adjusted the controls in the basement lab regularly, trying to minimize the impact on innocent families while increasing pressure on Diana Watkins and the other HOA board members who had knowingly participated in stealing his land. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Jack heard a car coming up the muddy road to his cabin. Through the window, he recognized Diana Watkins' silver SUV. He wasn't surprised she had finally come. He put on a pot of coffee and waited. Diana knocked hard on his door, her face grim when he opened it. Her normally perfect hair was disheveled, and dark circles showed under her eyes. "Mr. Harrison?" she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We need to talk." Jack stepped aside to let her in. "Coffee?" "I don't want coffee," Diana said, but then sighed. "Actually, yes, thank you." She sat at his small kitchen table, looking around the simple cabin with new eyes. Jack poured 2 cups of coffee and joined her. "Your cabin seems unaffected by everything happening down in the valley," Diana said. "How is that possible?" Jack sipped his coffee. "My family has lived on this land for generations. We understand it better than most." "Cut the cryptic answers," Diana snapped. "Half my development is uninhabitable. Houses are merging into each other. Rooms disappear for hours, then reappear. Windows show views of places that don't exist. I have families living in hotels because their homes aren't safe anymore." "They're not your homes," Jack said calmly. "They're built on Harrison land. Always have been." Diana's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "The survey was falsified," Jack finished for her. "Don't pretend you didn't know. The county investigation found emails between you and Clerk Rogers discussing how to alter the property lines. He's facing criminal charges. You might be too." Diana's face paled. "How did you know about that?" "Olivia has friends at the county office." Jack leaned forward. "But that's not why you're here. You want to know about what's happening to the houses." "Do you know?" Diana asked. "Are you causing this somehow?" Jack considered how much to reveal. According to his grandfather's journals, no one outside the Harrison family had ever been told about the quantum displacement field. But perhaps it was time. "My great-grandfather was a physicist," Jack said. "Not the university kind. He was self-taught, brilliant but private. He made discoveries about quantum mechanics in the 1920s that the scientific world still hasn't caught up to." Diana looked skeptical but remained silent. "Each generation of my family continued his work," Jack continued, "including my grandfather, Frank Harrison. They built a security system throughout our land, a quantum displacement field that activates when unauthorized structures are built on Harrison property." "That's impossible," Diana whispered, but her eyes showed doubt. "Is it? You've seen what's happening down there. The houses aren't just breaking, they're changing in ways that defy normal physics. Space itself is warping." Diana stood up suddenly. "Show me. Whatever device you're using to do this, show me right now or I'm calling the police." Jack smiled. "The police have already been here 3 times. They found nothing because they don't know what to look for. But I'll show you." He led her to the trapdoor beneath the rug. Diana's eyes widened as he opened it, revealing the stairs to the basement laboratory. When they descended into the room filled with humming equipment and glowing tubes, Diana gasped. "What is all this?" she asked, moving slowly around the room. "The Harrison family legacy," Jack said. "My grandfather called it our insurance policy. The quantum displacement field has been dormant for decades, but I activated it after I returned home and found what your HOA had done." Diana stared at the maps on the central table, showing the property with the strange symbols and equations drawn across it. "This is causing the anomalies?" "The land is rejecting what doesn't belong," Jack explained. "The effect will continue to grow stronger. Eventually, nothing built on Harrison soil will remain stable unless I allow it to be." Diana turned to him, anger and fear mixing in her expression. "Turn it off. Whatever this is, turn it off now." Jack shook his head. "I can't. Once activated, the process can't be stopped. I can direct it, focus it on certain areas, but it will continue until the land is cleared or returned to its rightful owners." "You're destroying people's homes, their lives," Diana shouted. "You stole my family's land," Jack replied evenly. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you falsified those surveys. How many families did you tell about the disputed property line? Did you mention it in your sales contracts, or did you just smile and take their money?" Diana's silence was answer enough. "There is a solution," Jack said after a moment. "The HOA can legally return the land to the Harrison family, with compensation for damages. If I'm recognized as the rightful owner, I can stabilize the affected areas." "That's blackmail," Diana said. "That's justice," Jack countered. "And it's the only option you have left. The quantum field is accelerating. In another month, none of those houses will exist in normal space anymore." Diana walked back to the stairs. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'll need to call an emergency board meeting." "Do what you need to do," Jack said. "But remember, the land knows who it belongs to, and time is running out." After Diana left, Jack sat alone in the laboratory, surrounded by his family's incredible legacy. He wondered what his grandfather would think of how he had handled the situation. The quantum displacement field was more powerful than even Frank Harrison had predicted. It wasn't just rejecting the unauthorized structures, it was reshaping reality around them. Jack looked at the control panel, with its dials and switches. He could increase the effect or decrease it, focus it or spread it out. The power his family had created was both wonderful and terrible, and now it was his responsibility alone. The emergency board meeting of the Pinewood Valley HOA lasted for hours. Diana Watkins presented what she had learned in Jack's basement laboratory. Some board members laughed in disbelief. Others grew angry, accusing her of making up stories to cover the development company's construction failures. But as night fell and the meeting continued, they couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Through the windows of the community center, they could see houses in the distance bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. Streetlights flickered with strange colors. A child's swing set rose slowly into the air, hovered for a minute, then settled back down in a different yard. "We need to make a decision," Diana said, her voice tired. "Harrison says we can either return the land to his family with compensation or watch as the houses continue to warp until they're gone completely." Sam Miller, the HOA treasurer, shook his head. "This is insane. We should call the government, the military. Someone must be able to stop this." "The county sheriff sent deputies yesterday," board member Liz Johnson said. "Their cars stalled as soon as they crossed into the development. When they tried to walk in, they got lost between houses that shouldn't connect. It took them 4 hours to find their way out, and they refused to go back. News crews had set up a perimeter around Pinewood Valley. The story had gone national. Scientists and paranormal experts gave conflicting theories on television about what might be causing the Pinewood anomaly. None came close to the truth." By dawn, the HOA board reached their decision. They had no choice but to negotiate with Jack Harrison. Meanwhile, Jack sat in his kitchen with Olivia, drinking coffee as the sun rose. They had stayed up all night monitoring the quantum field's activity. The readings were off the charts. Spaces within the development were folding in on themselves, creating pockets that existed partly in our dimension and partly in others. "It's happening faster than Grandpa predicted," Olivia said, looking at the data on her laptop. At this rate, the entire development will be uninhabitable within days, not months. Jack nodded. I've been trying to slow it down, but the field has a mind of its own now. It's like it's angry. The phone rang. It was Diana Watkins, asking to meet with Jack and his lawyer. The HOA board was ready to negotiate. That afternoon, Jack, Olivia, and their family lawyer met with the HOA board and their legal team at a hotel conference room in the next town over. No one wanted to meet anywhere near Pinewood Valley. 2. Many strange things were happening there. Maps and documents covered the long table. Property surveys, both the original correct ones and the falsified versions, lay side by side. The difference was clear now. 80 acres of Harrison land had been stolen through corrupt paperwork. The HOA is prepared to acknowledge the survey, error, and return the disputed land to the Harrison family, Diana said formally. We propose a settlement that includes compensation for the unauthorized use of your property. Jack's lawyer leaned forward. And the current residents? The homes already built? Diana looked uncomfortable. Half the homes are already empty. Many families have broken their mortgages and left. For those remaining, Jack interrupted. I don't want to punish innocent families who bought homes in good faith. If I'm recognized as the legal owner of the land, I can stabilize the affected areas. Residents can stay as tenants until we work out a fair solution. The negotiations continued for hours. By evening, they had an agreement. The HOA would publicly admit the survey mistake and legally return the 80 acres to the Harrison family. They would pay a substantial settlement for the attempted land theft. Jack would use his family technology to stabilize the remaining homes so people could live in them safely. No one outside the room would ever know the full truth about the quantum displacement field. The official story would blame the strange events on an unspecified environmental anomaly that the Harrison family knew how to manage due to their long history with the land. As Jack drove back up to his cabin that night, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The land would return to his family where it belonged. Justice would be served. But he still had work to do. In the basement laboratory, Jack carefully adjusted the controls of the quantum displacement field. According to his grandfather's journals, once he was recognized as the rightful owner of the land, he could reshape the field to stabilize the affected spaces. Homes already too far gone would need to be abandoned, but many could be saved. Olivia joined him, bringing food from the kitchen. So it worked, she said. Grandpa's trap did exactly what it was designed to do. Jack nodded, looking at the glowing tubes and humming machinery. I wonder if he ever thought it would actually be used. The journals say the field was created in 1924, but it's been sitting dormant all these years. 100 years, Olivia said, just waiting for someone to make the wrong move. The next morning, government officials arrived in Pinewood Valley. Scientists in hazmat suits cautiously approached houses that defied the laws of physics. They took readings and samples, trying to explain what they were seeing. Jack watched, from a distance, knowing they would never find the true source. Diana Watkins met Jack at the edge of the development. Her face was grim but resigned. The papers will be signed this afternoon, she said. The land returns to the Harrison family, along with the settlement we agreed upon. Jack nodded. I'll begin stabilizing the habitable houses immediately. It will take time, but people should be able to return to about 70 of the homes within a week. And the others? Diana asked. Too far gone, Jack said. Some spaces have folded too deeply into other dimensions. They can't be brought back. Completely. As if to demonstrate his point, a house at the far end of the development shimmered like a mirage, then seemed to collapse inward, growing smaller and smaller until it vanished entirely. The people watching gasped, but Jack had expected it. The quantum displacement field was completing its work on the most affected areas. News helicopters circled overhead, filming the vanishing house. Scientists shouted into phones and radios. Government officials looked stunned. No one understood what they were seeing except Jack. You're not going to explain it to them, are you? Diana asked, watching the chaos. Jack shook his head. Some knowledge isn't meant for everyone. My family learned that long ago. That's why they stayed here, quiet and private, instead of sharing their discoveries with the world. And now that knowledge belongs to you, Diana said. It wasn't a question. Jack looked out over the valley that had belonged to his family for generations, the land that had protected itself in ways no one could have imagined. The land remembers, he said quietly, and so do I. 1 year after the first house was built on Harrison land, Jack stood on the hilltop beside his cabin. The view had changed dramatically. Where once 156 identical homes had stood in neat rows, now only 23 houses remained, clustered near the edge of the property. Their shapes were no longer identical or even normal. Some had walls that curved in gentle arcs. Others featured windows that seemed bigger on the inside than the outside. One had a chimney that occasionally disappeared for a few hours before returning. The rest of the valley had returned to nature, though not quite the nature that had existed before. The grass grew in patterns that shifted daily. Trees appeared and disappeared at random. Flowers bloomed in colors that had no names in any human language. Scientists called it the Harrison anomaly. They had established research stations around the perimeter but never ventured too deep into the affected areas. The first research teams who tried had returned changed, babbling about dimensions beyond human comprehension and writing equations that made no sense to anyone but seemed to work when applied to quantum physics. The government had declared the Central Zone a scientific phenomenon of interest. They paid Jack a consulting fee to help manage access to the area, though they had no idea of his true connection to the anomaly. Olivia walked up beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Beautiful morning," she said, handing him one. Jack nodded. "The field has stabilized. Grandpa's journals were right about that too. Once the land returned to Harrison ownership, the quantum effects reached equilibrium. And the remaining families, how are they doing?" "They're adapting," Jack said. "It's not easy living in houses that occasionally rearrange themselves, but the effects are mild now. Most have stayed because the government pays them well as part of the research project." Today was a special day. The Harrison family was hosting a gathering to officially mark the resolution of the Pinewood incident, as the legal documents called it. The former HOA members who had admitted their wrongdoing would be there, along with representatives from the county, the state scientific authority, and the remaining residents. Down in the valley, workers were setting up tables and chairs on the community green. This space had once been the center of the development, surrounded by houses. Now it sat at the edge of the anomaly zone, a border between normal reality and the quantum-shifted landscape beyond. Jack and Olivia walked down to join the preparations. As the landowner and the person who best understood the anomaly, Jack had become an important figure in the community. People greeted him with respect, though some still looked at him with fear or suspicion. Diana Watkins approached as Jack checked the setup for the signing ceremony. She looked older than she had a year ago. The stress of dealing with the Pinewood disaster had taken its toll. "Mr. Harrison," she said formally, "everything is ready for the ceremony." "Thank you, Diana," Jack replied. "And please, after all we've been through, you can call me Jack." She nodded stiffly. Their relationship remained complicated. Diana had lost her position as HOA president, her reputation, and nearly faced criminal charges. Only Jack's testimony that she had cooperated fully once the truth was revealed had saved her from prosecution. "The final settlements will be distributed today," she said. "Most of the families who lost their homes have accepted the terms." "Good," Jack said. "They deserve compensation. None of this was their fault." The ceremony began at noon. Jack stood at a podium and addressed the gathered crowd. Media cameras pointed at him from a designated area. The Pinewood story had fascinated the public for months, though few knew the whole truth. "1 year ago, a mistake was made," Jack began. "Land that had belonged to my family for generations was incorrectly surveyed and developed without permission." What followed was unprecedented. He looked out at the faces watching him. The remaining residents who lived in the strange quantum-shifted houses. the scientists who studied the anomaly but couldn't explain it, the government officials who had declared the area a scientific wonder while quietly worrying about its implications. Today we formally recognize the resolution of that mistake. The Harrison family has been restored as the legal owners of this land. Those who wish to remain in their homes may do so under the new agreements we've signed. Those who lost homes have been compensated. Jack pointed to the anomaly zone behind him, where reality shimmered and shifted in ways that defied explanation. The Harrison anomaly, as it's now called, will be preserved as a scientific resource. My family has always had a special connection to this land. We understand it in ways others don't. We will continue to work with researchers to study the unique properties that have emerged here. What Jack didn't say was that the quantum displacement field his grandfather had created was still active, still protecting the land from further development. It would remain that way as long as a Harrison watched over it. After the ceremony, people mingled on the green, eating food from local restaurants and talking about their experiences. Jack found himself standing with a small group of residents who had chosen to stay in the affected houses. "My kitchen still rearranges itself every few days," said Laura Bennett, a middle-aged teacher. "But we've learned to work with it. Sometimes it comes up with better layouts than the original. Our stairs still add an extra step occasionally," added her husband Paul. "But now they make a little chiming sound before they change so we don't fall." These families had adapted to living in houses that defied normal physics. Some even claimed the quantum effects had benefits. Children who grew up in the houses showed unusual aptitude for mathematics and physics. Gardens produced vegetables with enhanced nutritional value. No one in the remaining community had gotten sick in months. As evening approached, Jack returned to his cabin on the hill. From his porch, he watched the sunset paint the anomaly zone with colors that shifted and swirled. In some places, the light bent around invisible corners, creating rainbows that formed impossible shapes. Olivia joined him with a bottle of their grandfather's old whiskey and 2 glasses. "To Frank Harrison," she said, raising her glass. "He would have loved to see his work in action." Jack clinked his glass against hers. "To Grandpa Frank, and to all the Harrisons who protected this land." They sat in comfortable silence, watching darkness fall over the valley. In the anomaly zone, points of light appeared, floating like fireflies but in patterns too precise to be natural. The quantum field expressing itself in new ways. Jack thought about his family's legacy. For 100 years, the Harrisons had kept their discoveries secret, building defenses for the land they loved rather than seeking fame or fortune. Now that secret was partly revealed, though few understood the true nature of what had happened. The HOA land had protected itself, just as his grandfather had intended, and Jack would continue that tradition, watching over both the land and its strange new properties. The quantum displacement field wasn't just a security system anymore. It had become something more, a new way for the land to express itself, a bridge between this world and others beyond human understanding. As stars appeared overhead, Jack felt at peace. The Harrison trap had been sprung, justice had been served, and the land was safe once more.